Pippa Jones on TRE.
And now over to the United States, and I'm delighted to welcome to the programme really the highest authority on animal experimentation. I've got Dr. Ray Greek on the line. He's a physician who is board certified in anaesthesiology and subspeciality certified in pain management. He was an instructor at two of the United States' most prestigious medical schools and has published in the medical literature. He has performed experiments on animals and research with humans. Moreover, he has authored and co-authored 5 books that challenge the value of animal experiments from a strictly scientific perspective. And it's with this in mind that I welcome him to the program. Good morning, Dr. Greek.
Good morning, Pippa. How are you?
I'm very well and very delighted to have you here today. Honoured, should I say, because frankly, you are one of the few voices on this planet that does have a voice in terms of the establishment. You are somebody the establishment will listen to.
Well, some people in the establishment will listen to me. Those who are influenced by a vested interest or their ego or just by maintaining the status quo, they don't tend to listen to me too much. But if people are interested in science and they believe that the scientific method is the best way humans have ever found to understanding the material universe, then yes, I do have an audience with those people.
The fact is, though, Dr. Greek, is that in the time that you have been speaking out against animal experimentation, you have made some people listen. Some people sit up and listen who perhaps wouldn't have done so before. And you've been invited to speak, for example, this year. Let's look at Europe for a minute, in front of the EU Parliament.
Yes. I was invited over there. I went over there in May and spoke about the scientific merits or lack thereof of using animals. And some of the MEPs seemed to listen and seemed to understand, and of course others did not. But still, it was a good venue, and I hope more will come of it.
Well, certainly an issue like this, I suppose, with any issue that campaigners are trying to overturn is a matter of step-by-step baby steps, and we can only be grateful and applaud when even the slightest movement in the right direction is made. Now, this last year in Europe, over 1 million EU citizens actually forced this historic science hearing that you were invited to speak at. 1,173,000 EU citizens who actually had to submit passport details, ID numbers, birth dates, and so on to prove that they were who they were. In other words, it was a very verified collection of people shouting out that this issue had to be raised in the EU Parliament.
Yes, that is my understanding.
Now, what we've seen, that happened back in May.
Yes, that's correct.
And whilst it seems then that this was a defining moment, could you tell us what has been the outcome of that? What's happened since then?
Well, some people in the European Parliament tried to somewhat negotiate with the powers that be that made the petition, tried to get them to accept perhaps less than what they wanted. The presentations at the EU were rather brief. We were not given a lot of time to really explain the science, and a lot of the MEPs had already written down what they were going to say before they ever heard our presentations. So there's quite a bit of opposition. On the other hand, we did make inroads with some of the MEPs. Some of them were shocked that the science did not say what they had always thought the science had said. And so I think the best way to describe all this was it was a beginning. Certainly nothing legislative came out of the experience, but I think we did educate quite a few people, and I think we caused even more people to question, if only for a few minutes, whether what they had been told all their lives was true. And there's a good general principle behind that. Just because you've heard something your entire life doesn't mean it's true. You have to think about it. You have to do research on it. You have to think on your own. And unfortunately, politicians are not necessarily noted for doing that. They're noted for supporting the people who support them. So we'll continue to do what we've been doing, but I think science is very difficult to argue with once you understand the science. And I think this is the way to proceed in these matters.
And I think that the element of power of suggestion is what's so important here, Dr. Greek. The fact is that the industries that produce and manufacture, whether it be pharmaceuticals or cosmetics of some description, which are manufactured with the use of animal testing, animal experiments at their base, are presented to the public in such a way that it looks so acceptable and clean and sanitized and good. And many times an animal might actually be used, even to a fluffy bunny, to actually advertise something, whether it be a cosmetic product or whatever it might be. The fact is that until people have their eyes opened, they have no idea. So it's not that they're ignorant, or perhaps it is that they're ignorant. But once you present the truth to them, then they start to listen. So it's very important, isn't it, to have a platform to speak in the way that you are beginning to get?
Oh, absolutely, because if you don't have a platform, you're just talking to yourself and your friends. I think you hit upon 2 points in that. The first is that the government really does control a lot of this, and the government does not have a good track record. For example, the British government in 2009 actively promoted a bomb detection device called the ADE-651. This thing was sold in Iraq for tens of thousands of pounds, and as it turns out, it was a gimmick. It was described as being no better than an electric divining rod. In other words, it had no bomb-detecting qualities whatsoever. It was just this little box, this little plastic container with some wires running around it that didn't connect to anything. And the person who tried selling bombs was eventually convicted in British court and was sentenced to jail. However, a year after that happened, the UK government admitted that the Army and the UK civil servants helped to market the bomb detectors. Okay? So just because the government requires something has no meaning whatsoever as to whether or not that entity is viable. You may have heard of the BBC or the Harlequin Beagles in the UK, and the government is now very much behind that, and behind B&K Universal, and the UK government has said that they need this and the people need this. Well, these are the same people that wanted other people to buy, bogus bomb detectors. So, and testing drugs on beagles works about as much as testing bombs on bogus bomb detectors. It's about the same thing.
See, that kind of explanation from a professional, from a man of science, is exactly why having somebody like you on air is so important, because that's what we need to be told, because otherwise we are blind and deaf to what is being done supposedly for our good, but actually for the benefit of the profits of the those who own these industries. Now, the fact is, Dr. Greek, that there are a number of facets to look at the issue of animal testing, from which to look at the issues of animal testing. There is, of course, the cruelty to animals. There is, of course, the idea that medicine is being held back by something which is inappropriate in terms of producing results. There are other issues as well. Can you just give us an idea, as a professional, as simply as you can, about the different angles we should be looking at this from?
Well, the first angle that you should focus on is just the fact that it doesn't work. And just as selling bomb detectors to Iraq that are nothing more than pieces of plastic that are shaped to look funny, it's totally unethical to try and sell a product, especially a life-saving product, that darn good and well hasn't the slightest chance of ever working. And those bomb detectors could not have worked under any circumstances. It violates laws of physics. And the same thing is true of animal experiments, trying to predict what a drug will do in a human or trying to predict what a disease will do in a human. And this violates the principles of biology. It violates the principles of physics. This is impossible. This is scientifically impossible. So the first thing that I would focus on is that this just simply does not work. But number two, the fact that it doesn't work means that we are funding research in terms of animal experiments instead of funding research that does work. We're not funding human-based research. We're not funding research for better technology. So a lot of resources are being wasted that could lead to cures for cancer, that could lead to cures for Alzheimer's and so forth. And finally, when the research in animals is done, it's not just done, it's now very misleading. And so one animal-based research project will spur 10 more, and those 10 more will spur on 10 more. And so it's a real cascade effect. And then you have even more and more and more money going to not only useless projects, but projects that are actively misleading. And patients are being harmed because of all this. So when a drug comes to market that worked well in animals, but it ends up not working in humans, and indeed it ends up hurting humans. It harms their liver, it harms their brain, it harms their kidney, kills them, whatever. This is a terrible thing. And it's all based on exactly the same science that selling fake bomb detectors was based on.
Has there ever been a case, as far as you're aware, of any kind of lawsuit against a product which has been tested on animals, which has been found unfit for humans or dangerous for humans?
No, not to my knowledge. We have actually checked into that and tried to do that. And I think it could be done, but it's going to cost a lot of money, and you're going to have to find the right kind of lawyers to do it. There's differences between the laws in the UK and the laws in the U.S. I think it would be a little bit easier to bring that lawsuit in the U.S., but still it's going to be very difficult to do it. It could be done, but you're looking, in the U.S. or the UK, it would probably cost $5 to $10 million U.S. dollars or British pounds, just because that's the way the legal system works. So I think there's merit to it, but it's going to be very, very expensive.
So, Dr. Greek, let's try and understand this. What we have here is a system wherein the industry is set up in such a way that it needs presentation of animal experiments to be allowed to be given certain certification to pass on to eventually into the public domain. Is that correct? Is that how?
Yes, that is correct.
Now, so what is that all about, and what came first, the chicken or the egg? How did animal testing start, and is it hugely profitable for these industries? Because what other reason would there be?
Well, it's not really profitable for the pharmaceutical industry. A lot of people want to villainize the pharmaceutical industry for doing animal testing. A lot of scientists in the pharmaceutical industry today are going on record every week saying that animal testing doesn't work and we have to do something else.
And why are they saying that? Are they saying that because they care about animals, or because they're concerned about the science being...
They're concerned about their bottom line. They're concerned that the pharmaceutical companies are, in a financial crisis right now. They're not about to go bankrupt, but they don't have that many products in the pipeline. And the reason that they don't have any products in the pipeline is because the pipeline is usually based on animal research. Okay, so if it's animal-based research that's giving you these products and animal-based research doesn't work, eventually you're going to figure out that the pipeline's going dry. And you're going to have to start doing human-based research, human-based testing. It's going to have to revolve around humans. The people who are really raising the most ruckus are in two groups. There's these contract research organizations that own the animals and that do the animal testing. The pharmaceutical industry, for the most part, will allow other companies to do the animal testing for them so that they don't have to do the actual animal testing part in their facilities and so on and so on. So these contract research organizations, that's essentially their entire income. And you have many of these in the UK. We have many of these in the US. And that is what they do. And they are yelling very loud that animal testing is necessary and so on and so on. Well, when the pharmaceutical scientists say it's not necessary and the people who make the money are saying it is necessary, there's an obvious way for the rest of the population to look at that situation and think twice about it. But the other people who make money from this are the people in academia, the research scientists themselves. They get grants to do this research. These grants fund their laboratories. These grants are important to them from their ego perspective, and a lot of the researchers pay their mortgage on this. And when you put all the universities of the United States and the United Kingdom and the EU together, that's a huge lobbying effort. All right, so I would say the number one reason that animal testing and animal-based research persists is actually because of the universities. And if you look at what the universities turn out, it's horrible. You're looking at something around 1 in a million animal studies will actually go on to be important in developing a human drug or a human treatment. That type of inefficiency would not be tolerated in any industry at all. But the animal experimentation industry is getting away with it really just because, like you said, people are ignorant. They're not stupid. They're ignorant. They don't understand how drugs are developed. They don't understand what's going on in labs, and they just take the word for it from the people who are making the money from it. And that is never a good idea.
Now, a company such as B&K Universal that you've already mentioned and referred to as having devised the mechanism that was sold in Iraq are also one of the companies, this is just to shine a light on a particular situation, that are breeding beagles for use in testing in England. Now, there's been a lot of coverage on this. This has been particularly, I suppose, helpful in raising the issue with many people who would perhaps otherwise not have known. But the fact is that these beagles are worth a lot of money as an animal bred especially for a laboratory. But once it's in that laboratory, the cost of carrying out those experiments, keeping the animal in a clean environment and so on, I mean, it is quite a costly process, one would imagine.
It is a costly process, but other people are paying for that. And so what the UK has gone on record as saying is, and I'm paraphrasing here, this is not an exact quote, but the UK has said if the UK does not develop the B&K facility to breed more beagle dogs, then other countries will, and the UK will then have to import them, and this will not be financially profitable for the UK. Well, think of the bomb detector that I talked about. The bomb detector doesn't work, okay? And so the UK is basically saying, well, if we don't develop this fake bomb detector, other countries will develop a fake bomb detector, and then we'll be out all that money that we could have made from selling a fake bomb detector, because the situations are absolutely analogous. Beagle dogs cannot tell you what a drug is going to do in a human. Beagle dogs cannot tell you how a human is going to react to disease. We've tested this over the last 5, 6, 7 decades, and it's been proven time after time that beagle dogs are not a predictive modality for humans. This should not come as a shock. Other humans are not predictive modalities for you and me. Okay, we now know that medicine has to be personalized. The drug that works really well for me may harm you, or vice versa. So testing drugs on an entirely different species is really pre-scientific thinking. And the reason it persists, in a nutshell, is because of money.
Is there any one drug that you can name, however long ago it may have been, that actually you can say it was justified to use animals in experiments?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. I can give you a little bit more general answer to that. Back in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, we didn't know what the heart did. We didn't know what the function of the heart was. And even into the 1900s, we didn't know what the function of the pancreas was. Now, you can open up virtually any mammal and, do some experiments on the heart, and you can figure out that it pumps blood. You can open up virtually any mammal and figure out what the pancreas does. Okay, so when you're talking about really, really basic functions of the mammalian body, sure, you can figure out what's going on, whether it's a human or a horse or whatever. And there are drugs that react exactly the same way in humans and animals. For example, sulfuric acid. If you pour sulfuric acid on your finger will go away. If you pour sulfuric acid on an animal, the same thing will happen. This type of knowledge is hundreds of years old, and some of this was helped by studying animals. But today we're in a very different situation. It would kind of like be trying to study whale oil so that we can figure out how to make better lights. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It's a non sequitur. So today we want to know what this drug will do to you as opposed to me, as opposed to your mother. All right? Testing on monkeys is not going to give us that information. I don't care what monkeys and dogs and rats and mice were good for in the past. The questions have changed, which is good. Science has advanced. We know a lot more than we did now. And if people want to argue about whether animals were necessary for past developments, I don't really care. Okay, what I care about is the questions that we're answering that need to be answered today. How are we going to cure AIDS? How are we going to get drugs for malaria that work on you and me and other people? Well, we're going to have to get 7 or 10 or 20 different drugs for malaria, because a malaria drug that works on both you and me, I may not tolerate it because of side effects. Okay, those are not the questions that were being asked in the 1800s, and we've gone a long way since then. So this whole issue of, well, what did drugs or what did animals make in terms of a contribution 200 years ago, it's a red herring. No one cares. It's not relevant to today's argument.
With the recent campaign in Europe, and we're around 1.2 million citizens who actually signed this initiative, which brought you in front of the EU Parliament, clearly there is a call for change from the public. Us, the public, would first of all perhaps in many situations not even know that a product has been tested on an animal, and secondly we might be compromised because if we become sick and a doctor prescribes something to us, even if we did know it's being tested on an animal, we would, not being no medical professional, would be concerned about not taking the doctor's advice. So really this discussion, this debate has to come from the top, from professionals. There has to be a scientific and a scientific debate, if you like, with people like yourself and those people that you've mentioned in the pharmaceutical industries who are backing calls for an investigation of some kind. What is it that you want, Dr. Greek? What is it that you would be the best way forward from now?
I think that I agree with everything that you said, and I think the thing that has to happen is that the EU, or perhaps Britain alone, has to convey some unbiased experts in the relevant fields that we're talking about. I'm talking about evolutionary biology, complexity science, philosophy of science, empirical medicine, and so on. And we need experts in those areas who will listen to what I have to say and listen to what the opposition has to say and make a scientific judgment about it. And this can be in the form of a debate. A debate can be in various formats. You don't have to actually stand on a stage and debate each other. This can be done through written articles or whatever. But we need people who don't have a vested interest in the outcome and who are experts in science to say, look, Greek is full of it. He's an American. Tell him to go back home. What he's saying doesn't make sense. And if that's the case, I'll go back home and I'll shut up. But if they say, you know what, Greek is right, this animal model stuff doesn't work, it didn't work that well 200 years ago and it doesn't work at all today, then I think there should be accountability for that. I think that this debate should be sponsored by the EU or by a government, and that government should say, we're going to go along with this. We're not experts in this science stuff, but we've assimilated a group of 10, 12, 13 people who are experts, who both sides agree are experts, and this is it. This is going to be the final word on the science. The science is going to be settled after this happens. I don't think you can educate the entire population of Europe or the UK, but you can present this argument to experts, and then let's see what they say.
And we obviously have organisations such as For Life on Earth, wonderful organisation, who to whose website I can refer people should they want to find out more. A number of other organisations as well. Go to forlifeonearth.org and you'll find everything there. But apart from those sort of campaign groups, is there anybody in Europe that you feel is really pushing this for you, that you feel is singing from the same song sheet?
Not many, and I would say that there are a lot of people who are saying things that are just not true. A lot of the so-called animal protection organizations don't understand the science behind this. If you hear animal organizations talking about the 3 R's or we need alternatives, that's a good indicator that they simply do not understand the science. The science is complicated. I went to school for 20, 25 years and studied science, and it tests me to put all these different scientific areas together. And if you hear people talking about, reduce, refine, replace, I can assure you they do not understand the science.
Well, it's wonderful that you put it simplistically enough for people like me to understand, and we're very, very grateful. Dr. Ray Greek, I certainly know who you are. I've known for a long time. I hope now that anybody who didn't know until today who's been listening to you will sit up and listen when you speak. And let me refer the listener once again, forlifeonearth.org, an organisation whose website has all of the information and much, much more. Dr. Greek, what can I say? Just thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Pippa.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
TRE, Talk Radio Europe.